In a future world, human civilization was devastated by nuclear war, and radiation spread across the entire planet. The soldiers in hibernation pods became the last spark of human civilization. 17 years had passed since the final battle erupted, and the energy supply in the base could no longer sustain the hibernation pods. As a piercing alarm sounded, the hibernation pod slowly opened, and a man wearing a gas mask awoke from within. The man removed his mask and took deep breaths, struggling to adapt to a body that hadn't moved in years. At that moment, the system prompted the soldier to urgently proceed to the assembly point. It was then that he discovered his squad mates, who had been in hibernation with him, were nowhere to be found. The man donned his protective gear and arduously climbed to the surface. When he emerged outside, he was greeted by a city reduced to ruins. The system indicated the emergency assembly point was still 10.4 kilometers away. The outside world was a post-war wasteland, with garbage strewn everywhere across the city. The ground was riddled with craters of varying sizes, and only a newspaper depicting the war hinted at the disaster that had occurred. He navigated through layers of obstacles and arrived at a long-abandoned military base. Upon seeing the telephone before him, the man seemed to glimpse a glimmer of hope. However, the moment he picked up the phone, a hollow sound revealed the truth. The system also failed to detect any signal. The man was completely lost in this city. He traversed streets littered with abandoned vehicles, pulling out binoculars to carefully observe his surroundings. At that point, the system indicated the environment was safe. Having been suppressed for so long, he removed his protective gear and took deep breaths of the free air. Just as he was enjoying the pleasant moment, the system suddenly detected a squad mate's signal. Following the system's prompt, he quickly rushed over. However, when he reached the destination, he was met with a corpse whose head had been blown off. The man could no longer contain himself and roared loudly, venting his inner loneliness. When you're the last person left on Earth, the oppressive feeling of solitude that weighs on your heart is something no one can truly understand. At that moment, he faced reality. With no food source, he could only eat dog food that barely satiated his hunger. The system's battery was also depleted, rendering it dysfunctional. Everything seemed to be gradually slipping away from him. The man, clinging to his last hope, ascended a tall building. Loading his final signal flare, he fired it into the sky, desperately hoping someone would see it. But the silent sky gave him his answer. Just as he was feeling disheartened, a signal flare suddenly rose in the distance.